One second. All right. We are live, everybody. How's everything going? So we got retired Master Sergeant Zambrano with us. And this evening, it's going to be a first for us. We're going to be talking about just our faith walk and talking about, being a Christian in the Marine Corps, talking about being a Christian on recruiting duty, especially, and just, giving it to God on a daily basis, which is not the easiest thing, because I've learned this, and we'll kind of talk about it. Just, yesterday getting promoted to gunny. It has been a crazy couple of years, and something somebody told me a long time ago was, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And that literally is what my life has been for a minute. So everything has been very different as to the way that I want it. But what God has taught me in this time is that it's not about what I want, it's about what he wants. And the journey that he puts us on is the journey that'll end up becoming our testimony. So without further ado, Pedro, explain, tell us who you are, and tell us how you came to Christ. What's your story?
Absolutely. And first of all, congratulations on your promotions. Well deserved.
Thank you, sir.
Excited to see you get pinned yesterday, by a Master Gunner Sergeant Montanez, good friend of ours.
Yes.
As you mentioned, officially retired over a year now, January. So it's a new feeling. I figured I'd keep this on right now to but yeah, no, so former career recruiter, spend my time on recruiting. How I became a Christian. I started out going to church with my mom and my grandmother and my brothers and sisters when I was real young, man. And at a young age, started to learn about faith and grow in just my walk. But, strayed away like a lot of us do throughout the years because of whether decisions or friendships, relationships, whatever it may be. And through my time on recruiting, slowly but surely began to re-emerge down that path towards a walk with faith in God and, with my wife. And by no means was I perfect. I was far from it. Still a work in progress every day. But I came back to faith, through my wife on recruiting, which is probably one of the toughest things to do because of the amount of hours and work that's, bestowed upon somebody's shoulders when you're out there leading Marines and, looking to accomplish mission all the time. But started as a young boy, came to faith through my wife and I, and a matter of fact, was baptized in August of 2015. Was a great time. But right when I got baptized, that's when the journey began on a whole nother level. So,
amen.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by, you came back to the faith because of your wife? What happened with that?
Great question. So, knowing about God and walking with God are two different things. You can know about God, but when you walk with him, it's a little different. So when I say coming back to the faith is actually, what I mean by that is deciding to actually walk with God, knowing of him and saying, yeah, I know God, or I've said a prayer here and there. It's different than when I made the decision to walk with God, and that walk, sometimes it was together. Sometimes it was a little bit, afar, trying to keep him as an assistant and not so much as the person, like the leader of my life.
Yeah.
Coming back to the faith, when I got baptized in 2015, I figured like a lot of things in my life they just get in order. And they did. And at the same time, other things arose that the challenge became stronger on the path to stay down that walk into that narrow door with Jesus being at the center of my life. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, but my wife's the one that led me back to Christ, man.
Bro, it's and I think that's like the beauty of it, right? Is when we talk about like, God's grace is sufficient and stuff like that, because, I kind of can, kind of share the same like you, and I so for me, like you said, it kind of growing up like that, like that's it, bro. I've been in church since 5, right? I got baptized, I think at like 5. And I remember when I got baptized, I can't remember a lot of things about my childhood, But like I can remember my dad being like he was mad that I was getting baptized because my pastor was like, oh, he's fine, like he knows enough. And my dad was like, he's 5 years old, like I don't think he's old enough to be able to get baptized. And then I ended up getting baptized again when I was like 10 or 12. And then I got baptized again when I was at boot camp. And then that was the last time I got baptized. So I've been baptized 3 different times. But, you know, I can say for a fact that like 100% I know Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. But a lot of it comes down to like, it's a journey that's never ending. You know what I mean? And there are a lot of times, like I can remember right now, when I was like 14 or 15 years old, I went to this youth retreat, and it was like 3 or 4 days long. And 3 Days Grace had this song. It was called "The Animal I Have Become." And I remember like I was leaving, I can like vividly remember this right now. I was leaving the church retreat and I was listening to that song. And I was just like thinking about like all the crappy things that I was doing as a teenage kid, that I definitely shouldn't have been doing as a teenage kid. You know, and I was thanking God for having this opportunity to be at this youth retreat. And, you know, I was like, I'll never go back doing those things, you know? And then life happened, and I definitely did go back to doing those things, man. But again, it goes back to, you know, God's grace is sufficient, because, you know, as years go on, new things happen, right? New sins come into your life, new things entice you. And but the fact of the matter is that throughout all of that, you know, God was there for you, you know, and he was just sitting there like, yo, just talk to me, man. Like I'm here. You're just not talking. And I think that's a hard part of it, because even like through this journey of the Marine Corps, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, so the other day I was at church. No, my bad. I was at the gym, and it was like 5 a.m. in the morning. I was doing back, and I was thinking about like getting promoted on Saturday, and I was thinking about like how I never thought in my life I would be a gunnery sergeant of Marines. Like I was like, bro, I would like no way. You know what I mean? Like I just never thought that, and like this day would come. And I thought about like everything I had been through and everything like that. And you know, one of the things that I think is crazy though is and I haven't really shared this too much with too many people. So when I was in before I went to Afghanistan, there was this guy that was at camp, that was on Camp Pendleton at like where you do, or camp, yeah, right, where you do CAX, and he was at the Warriors Club, right? And this guy had this missionary club, like this mission that he had created, where he sits down with all young men and he has them write like kind of like a little biography, and then he has them write like their favorite verse or whatever the case is. And I remember right before I left for Afghanistan, I had used that to share my testimony with a bunch of Marines that I was with. And then he had given us the book Psalm 91, which if you've never read it, anybody who's listening, it's actually like, so clearly Psalm 91 is the soldier's prayer, but then there's a book called Psalm 91 that goes verse by verse of the entire chapter. And then at the end of the book, what it does is it gives like actual like moments in history where somebody prayed Psalm 91 and then something miraculous happened, right? So I read the book, and I was like, wow, like the power of prayer really works, right? So I get to Afghanistan, and me and my driver, Haim, and that was his name. He was the LVSR driver. Every morning on the convoys, I would read Psalm 91. And he was like, bro, why do you read that every single day? And I was like, well, one day we're gonna need it, man. And he was like, bro, shut up. Like that's he was a Jewish cat. And he was just like, bro, like stop. I was like, bro, listen, man, like we're gonna need it. We're gonna need it. So literally every day of every convoy I read it. And you know, this one day, it was the same day that he asked me, why do you read it every day? I said, bro, we're gonna need it. And I'll never forget it. It was so I read it that morning, and then later on that day we ended up taking fire. and one of the guys that ended up getting, he was a record operator, Sergeant Williams. He ended up taking a round. Like it didn't hit him, but it went right past him.
Yeah.
And it went so fast past him that like his neck, like it just like opened up from the speed. Like, so literally it was that close to him that
Yeah.
it literally went like that. And later on in that day, I was nowhere near them. We had our dispersion and everything. And I heard them all accounting for different things that had happened that day. So
Mhm.
Sergeant Williams was like, yeah, man, I was out fixing this truck and I moved left and this bullet went right by me. And then this other guy, Cushing, he was in his turret and he said that he felt like a tap on his back and he turned the turret like this way, still in his line of sight, but that just turned a little bit and then bullets hit right behind him. And I was just like, and as it was happening, like as I was hearing these things, I looked at my driver and I was like, bro, did you hear that? And he was like, bro, shut up, man. And I was like, bro, what do you mean? Like, what, bro, what are we talking about?
Right.
And then when we got back, from so at the very end of that same convoy, we were going down this place called Route Red. And when you go down Route Red, it would be like you would come down these wadis, which are just these big hills,
Yeah.
and we would go down the wadi, and then what happened was our LVSRs were getting stuck where they couldn't go up, and then the LVSR was fine. The local national vehicles, they were just like this, so they couldn't go up. So we ended up hooking up. So we literally had it was like 150 vehicle convoy. And so we ended up having to haul the local nationals up. And I got out to provide security. And as I get out to provide security, I hear shots being fired, but I don't know where it's coming from, like at all. Like I just hear shots being fired. And I remember finally we get all of our trucks moved and me and him hop in, we get in the truck and we freaking start pushing. And right as we get up the hill to start pushing, we hear on the comms from our lieutenant, hey, you're gonna go around the mouse, which was the guy's call sign for who was in front of us. He was like, hey, you're gonna switch positions with him. So we end up switching positions. We don't know why. We just do, what the lieutenant said. And literally right as that happens, Mouse ends up hitting an IED instead of us. And then, and he was good. Nothing didn't need a Casevac or anything like that. But he was good. He came back. And then as soon as we got back, we were doing our debrief. And this dude, Melgar, he was one of the gunners in I think it was a MATV, and he was providing overwatch security while me and Heim were moving the local nationals back and forth. And we get back, and as soon as we get back, Melgar is talking to someone at the smoke pit, and he comes over to me and he's like, yo, Bennett. I'm like, what's up, man? He's like, bro, I don't know how you're alive. I was like, okay, what are we talking about, man? And he was like, bro, he was like, dude, the whole time I was up there, I was praying because I couldn't see where the shots were coming from, but I could see the shots going in between your legs, and I could see the dust picking up in between your legs. No. And he was like, bro, I don't know how, I don't know what. He was like, and I felt so bad because I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I didn't have positive identification. Yeah. And he was like, but I could see it picking up behind, underneath your legs and stuff. And I was like, well, I'm glad, somebody saw it, or whatever. But then I looked at my boy and I was like, bro, what are we what are we talking about? Yeah. And but that just brings me back to thinking about how many times God has been there for me throughout my life, and throughout my time in the Marine Corps, coming up on 16 years, and even just all through recruiting duty, and all through my wife. Yesterday I shared at my promotion about my wife when she had cancer and how she beat it. And my wife numerous times, we had at 2 or 3 miscarriages before we had our first son. So to think about everything that has happened in the past 16 years, of, you know, my marriage, me being in the Marine Corps, and just to think back about like God was always there. But the crazier part of it is that like even though God was always there, I wasn't always there. Like I wasn't always there talking to him and listening to him. And you know, and I think that's the hard thing about this thing that we call, you know, like the faith walk, if you will.
Yeah.
Is we allow so many things to just kind of get in the way of it. You know, like it's, you know, like when you think about it, like at least for me, right? Like if I wanted to, you know, I could be on my way to work and I could call Pedro and I could be on the phone with Pedro for 45 minutes. And nothing would get in the way of it. But if I'm driving in my car and I go to call Jesus, as soon as I start talking to God, I'm getting phone calls, I'm getting interrupted, somebody's texting me, somebody's calling me, or I'm thinking left, right, and it's just like, bro, like you gotta start, like, and that's something that like I'm living with right now is like you gotta put him on the forefront. Like he's constantly being there for you, he's constantly molding you and doing all these things. But like, when was the last time you had an intimate relationship and conversation with him? You know what I mean?
I do, man. I do. Yeah, when you shared your story yesterday, especially about your wife, you know, and the things that you all went through, and that's a lot, especially for stress on your personal relationship, stress on work, because I know you carried that into the office. I'm sure you had to carry it with you every time you were walking around and doing anything when it comes to just trying to make decisions, right? I think back to times like that as well, and just like you said, I could be doing a million other things. The moment I decided, you know what, I'm either pray or I'm gonna attempt to maybe learn a new scripture out of the Bible, whatever it may be, right? Anything connected to God, anything connected to faith. Every little obstacle or distraction would pop up. And you know, I've later come to realize that that's the enemy always looking to find a way in. And sometimes it's good reason. I'd say it's a good reason because it was to take care of somebody else. But I would put that other task or whatever in front of my decision to to study some faith or learn a scripture, and I wouldn't go back to it. So I'd be completely derailed from going back to what my I started reading, I wouldn't finish. Right? I'd tell myself I'm gonna read. Matter of fact, this is one that I've actually broken, and I need to start again today. And now I'm saying it out loud. I'm gonna be held. A few months ago, I made a decision that I was going to read a book of Psalm every day, right? To read through all the Psalms. And they're not long. Once you read them, they're not long.
Yeah.
But I've even stopped that, you know, and other things. And so I tell you all of that because anytime you look to get more connected with God and, you know, seeking more knowledge and seeking his word, you're going to find a distraction. You're going to see something pop up. Attention behind that's meant to derail you from your walk and growing in faith. You know, recruiting duty, and you know, just like a lot of others, man, there's a million distractions that happen all the time. From a phone call to a conversation to an issue to a success story, it doesn't matter. But everything and anything to do except with you getting right with God. And it's the only time we really want to go get right is when we're wrong.
Yeah, bro.
I've been guilty of that many.
Yep. Nah, it's but it definitely is, man. But it also too, though, I think it's also that same thing where like my son recently, he's been pushing me. So I go to church. A lot of times, man, I'm gonna be real open right now, but a lot of times I wake up late and I don't want to go to church. And then my daughter and my son come running in the bedroom and they're like, "Are we going to church today?" Like they come running in and they're like, "Hey, are we going? Are we going?" So it becomes an immediate thing. And now it's them pushing me. Right. And then recently, like a month ago, my son was in the back seat of the car and he randomly just said this Bible verse. And I don't remember exactly which one it was, but it was a psalm, and but it was like I needed it at that moment, like I needed that verse, and it was about like the trouble needing the Lord, and he hears them. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but he said it, and then he said the actual scripture, and then I turned around and I looked at him, and I was like, Lucas, where, like, how did you learn that? And because I'll be honest, like I didn't teach him, and I didn't go over like the memory verse or whatever the case is, and he just looked at me and he said, I just learned it. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, he's like, they taught us it at church. And he's like, I don't know why, but I just remembered it. And I was like, okay, but like how? I was like, did you read it like numerous times? Like, he was like, I don't know, Dad. I just remembered it. And I was like, okay. And then it got to the point where like every day I was in the car with him. I was like, hey, Lucas, tell me that verse. And then he was telling me it and telling me and telling me it. And then he got to the point where he was just like, no. He's like, he turned around and he was like, you memorized it. I'm done. And now he just won't tell me it. But nah, it was just, the reason why I bring that up though is because, you know, one thing I can thank my father for is my father raised me in the church. You know, growing up, you know, every single Sunday we were at church. Every Wednesday we were at either a Bible study or a prayer meeting. Yeah. And you know, and in the Bible it talks about that, right? Like it talks about you know, bringing your child up and they will return. And that's like an amazing thing to me, is like that's something that I can act, like really legitimately thank my father for. Is bringing me up in the church and giving me that need and that want to serve. But like we were talking about, it's definitely very easy to fall back and then get back in, and then fall back and then get back in, and and I think it's even harder because like once you're actually doing like really well in things, you know, this will come up or this will come up, and it's like, and then too though, it's also like the fruit of your labor, right? Like if you're actively in church, if you're actively reading, then you'll be able to be a better witness, and you'll be acting differently and stuff like that. And also just making sure, like, you know, like myself, like, so it's crazy. So one of my Marines told me just like a couple weeks ago, we were talking because I'm about to leave the office, and he was like, you know, man, I gotta tell you. I was like, what's that? He was like, you know, I heard a lot of stuff about you before you became my boss. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, so what did you hear? And he was like, oh, nothing, man. I was like, nah, like, what did you hear? And he was like, well, I heard that like you were this crazy Christian who like didn't curse, and like you didn't watch movies that had like cursing in it. And like I heard that like you were like this perfect person and like all this stuff. And I was just like, I was like, okay. And he was like, you know, I heard like you don't watch movies with nudity in it. And I was like, well, I don't. And I was like, because I don't. I haven't watched a movie with nudity in it in like I don't know how long. And just to be quite honest with you, like the reason for that is because in my past, I struggled with pornography a lot. So now I'm just like, nah, bro. Like nope. I'm married. Like I don't need to, you know, if a TV show like and reality is like I'm surrounded by my kids all the time. So I'm not like I don't have time to watch a movie that is rated R when my kids aren't around. But I was like, yeah, and also it just doesn't do anything for me. Like I don't. And then he was like, you know, and then he was like, yeah, you know, and now, and like apparently you'd like push, you know, not being an alcoholic on people. And I'm like, nah, man, I don't care at all that you don't drink. Like that's on you. Like I'll sit with you at the bar while you get drunk, but I'm not gonna drink, you know. And but the reason why I share that with you is because when I first got back on recruiting duty, I was going to church every Thursday. I was going to church every Sunday. And that when he told me that, it kind of made me realize the change that I've had in my attitude in the past 2 years, you know, and how I really haven't been as attentive to being in church constantly, being in the men's groups, but also at the same time, it also taught me that it's also how we preach the gospel that we got to make sure that we don't shove it down people's throats. Yeah, yep. Tovar said it. Yep. Psalms 34:17. The righteous cry out and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from their troubles. So yeah, that's exactly what it was, man. I was sitting, I promise you, bro. I was sitting in the car and I was thinking about something. I was like overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden my son just said that verse. And I was like, bro, what? Like, and that's the one thing that God's really been talking to me about like the past couple of months is just like the power of prayer. And it's crazy because the other day, um I have this box that I have from boot camp of like, all this stuff from like letters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked in it since probably boot camp. And my friend's sister, she wrote me a letter when I was in boot camp. And the letter had like, it was just like a picture of me, like she drew a picture of me with a crayon. And then like it was just like me, sir, like behind like an American flag or whatever the case, right?
Yeah.
And so she sent me a text message. She was like, "Hey, can you look for that picture?" I was like, "Yeah, it's in the box." So I went upstairs, I found the box, and I was looking through it, and I was looking through all these letters. And there was this teacher that had one of my all-time favorite teacher my whole life. She had purple hair. Her name was Miss Clifford. And me and her had this amazing relationship. She's actually where I got like my love of movies from. Because her class was cinema studies, and we would watch a movie and then we would talk about like parts of the movie and stuff like that. So because of her, that's where I got my real love of movies from. And so I was looking through the box and I found a letter from her, and I didn't even remember that she had written me a letter. And it was a little card like this big, and on the front of the card it just talks about how we're like people are in a rush all the time, and as we're rushing out the door we forget to pray, and then as the day goes on we just talk about how we'll go back to it, we'll get the time, we'll pray.
Yeah.
And then we don't. And then on the inside it was her writing, and she was just like, listen, I hope one thing that you take from this opportunity is the power of prayer. And she's like, Doug, I hope that you can learn how powerful prayer is, and that you can become like a prayer warrior, and like all this whole thing. And I started crying like as I was reading it, and then my son and my daughter were like, Daddy, why are you crying? And I was just like, because I really don't cry often. So when I do cry, it's like, what's going on? And I was just bawling, like, and I was just like, my son was like, what is that? And I was like, it's a letter from dad, somebody Daddy forgot about. And it was just like, bro. And the day before that, there was this dude in the gym that had a hat on that said prayer works. So I've just been like, bro, I need to get back to like praying daily, asking people for prayer requests, and just being open and honest with God, and fitting it in because it needs to be made a priority. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's interesting. Before we jumped on this, the call right now, I was, just looking on my phone, and I saw this thing and it popped up because for me, a lot when you mentioned earlier, like, hey, I had some issues with certain things, this was my vice. This is the thing that was corrupting me.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at walking with God, growing stronger in faith, right? Like in the past, I looked at, so I want to walk stronger in my walk with God and my faith so I don't sin. And the earlier, before we jumped on the call, was a reminder that, a while back, I made a decision that I'm not walking with God so that I don't sin. I'm walking with God and growing so that I can become closer to Him. And that shift, that actually helped me change my direction in it, because like I said, my wife led me back to my faith. And after that, it was all on me to make the decision and then to build a plan on how to grow stronger in my faith. And, similar things, man. I can tell you a good amount of times, matter of fact, one occasion, where it was like lightning, bro. You know how you ever had that feeling like something's happening for a reason because God's trying to get a hold of me. He's trying to get my attention, right?
Yeah,
God,
yeah,
your attention.
yeah,
Get out that verse, and you're like, "Where'd you learn that?" Okay,
yeah.
right. So I was taking a trip, and I was heading to Tennessee, and I'm hardly ever late to the airport. Matter of fact, I'm not late to the airport. I'm always on time. Travel the whole night, right? But that morning, I get up, running late to get out the door. Something's happening with my items. I can't find something. The traffic is insane, brother. I'm on the road about 2 hours early, and I'm still late. I get to the airport. The parking garage is full. I'm telling you, I'm to the point to where I'm about to miss my flight, and I don't miss flights. It just don't happen. And I'm carrying on, so it should be easy for me to get there.
Yeah.
So get to the airport. I'm in my head. I'm thinking like, man, I'm gonna miss my flight. This is so unprofessional. This is just not me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also saying to myself, there's a reason why this is happening. There's a reason I'm late. There's a reason the traffic was happening the way it was. Yeah. And prior to that, I was just having it. Look, no one's gonna tell you or make it out loud, announce it. But when you retire, brother, life is a little different. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you leave the Marine Corps and the Marine Corps in the past, regardless of how your career was, if it was great, if it was horrible, if it had good moments, bad moments, it don't matter. When it's over, it's over.
Yeah.
You got to find it after you retire. And so through that change and through that walk, no matter how strong you are, I mean, anyone who says that they got it all figured out when they retire, yo, man, they're lying, bro. They don't. They don't.
Yeah.
Or another throughout that time after they retire, they may spend a moment. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And where am I going? And so I was going through that piece.
Mm-hmm.
On this day, when all this was happening, I was having a little bit of those thoughts and everything in my brain, probably for about 2 weeks prior to this trip. And I get to the airport, and I'm trying to ask myself what's going on, why. And so I just say to myself, God, you're trying to get my attention. All right. Mm-hmm. Then go ahead and show me what you're trying to tell me and what you're trying to show me. Yeah. I get in the airport. I go down a whole complete terminal. I'm already on the opposite side, right? Yeah. I have this little routine when I get to the airport. I always want to get my boots shined, right? I always want to get my cowboy boots shined. So I see someone set up to go shine boots, and I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna go walk over there and get my boots shined. Mm-hmm. I walk up, and in the summertime, I usually keep my hair real short, right? And this past summer, I have my head like shaved. I walk up, and this gentleman, he says, "Hey, you need your boots shined?" Absolutely, my friend. I sit down. He proceeds to shine in my boots, and we just start talking. And he's like, "Hey, man, so yeah, I'm doing good this week." He was telling me about his life and situation. He's like, "Yeah, I've been in the Bible reading a lot." And I was like, "Okay, all right." He's like, "Yeah, I've been reading." He was telling me the section of the Bible that he was studying. I said, "Okay." Mm-hmm. And he doesn't look up at me and make eye contact. Mm-hmm. "Do you read the Bible?" I'm like, "Yeah, actually, I've been having it run through my brain for a minute. This certain section of the Bible, right? Ezekiel 25:17. He's like, "Oh, that's interesting." He's like, "I've had a friend tell me that when you have something like that happen, you should read before and after, because that whole piece, God's trying to give you something. You should go back and read it." Mm-hmm. And this ain't even a joke, bro. This isn't stuff up. My homie, I look down. The guy's name, what you think his name is, bro?
His name is Ezekiel.
His name is Jesus. Jesus, right? He's got a bald head, shaved, look just like mine. Up from the feet up, right? Yeah. Look like it could be me years down the line. Okay? Yeah. And I'm like, yo, this is not coincidence, man. Not. It is not, because a lot of times the way I've learned throughout my life, and this is just for me, and it might not be like that, but I've always seen it in my life where when God's trying to get my attention, it's usually through somebody who could be me. And then it's immediate, because it grabs my eye and it grabs my heart, because it's like, that could be me. And so when the guy was like, that was me, Hey man, I didn't see that dude again. I looked for him other times when I went back to the airport. Didn't see him until I went back in December for Christmas. And he tells me that day, man, you know what? I don't even work in this terminal. I'm usually in the other terminal. And then we start talking again, and he's telling me about what he read, and I remember him. And he's like, "You remember me?" I was like, "Yeah, man, I remember you, bro." And I say all that because
That's crazy.
when God wants to find you and get your attention, He's gonna get
Yeah.
you.
Well, bro, it's so similar to that. I was so this is before, so a little bit ago I was running 2 offices at once.
Yeah.
And it was stressful. And this one day I was like, you know what? Like, let me go visit those Marines. Like, let me get a haircut while I'm over there. And I was getting a haircut, and I can't remember exactly what was going on, but like I was having like this extremely stressful day. Like, it was just like this horrible day. Like, everything was going wrong and everything. And it was one of those days where and I have these days all the time where I contemplate no longer being an 8412. Like, I'm just like, bro, like, I'm done with this. Like, just stop. Like, I don't want to deal with this no more. Like, it's just over. And I was in my feelings, and I was like, am I gonna become a gunny? Like, am I gonna get promoted? Like, is this gonna happen? So I call my boy, because it was at the time where the allocation, the number hadn't come out, and I had sent my letter to the board, and then I found out there was a chance that I might not even be on the board. But actually, hold on, let's backtrack, because I need people. So, bro, it's crazy. So I randomly, back in June of 2024, I decided to go to Master Gunnery Sergeant Diaz's promotion. So I get in the car. It's like the promotion was for 11 o'clock in Quantico. I get in the car at 4 a.m. in the morning, and I get in the car with my son, and we drive to Quantico. We get there at like 8 o'clock, and we go to the Waffle House off base.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there at the Waffle House, because like, if I have the chance to get Waffle House, I'm getting Waffle House. Like, it's like one of my favorite things in life. So get there, me and my son were just eating breakfast, drinking my orange juice and my coffee. And I randomly get this message on Instagram from this Marine that I've never met, but I've just spoken to a couple of times.
Yeah.
And he's just like, "Hey man, like, you're a staff sergeant on recruiting duty, right?" And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, "You're a reservist, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Hey man, the board is supposed to convene in July." And he was like, "If you haven't already sent a letter to the board, like, you got to send them a letter." And I was like, "Send them a letter about what?" And he was like, "Well, bro, like, they might not know you're on recruiting duty." And then he was just like, and he was like, "Did you complete," because he's a PSR, and he was like, "Did you complete motor T chief course?" And I was like, "Nah." And at the time, like, I had been told by all of these people that if I hadn't completed motor T chief course, that I wasn't going to be eligible for promotion. So I just left it at that. I was like, I'll get promoted when I get promoted. Yeah. So this Marine, this Gunny Pinto, he just sends me this random message at like 6 a.m. And he's just like, "Hey dog, like, you need to write a letter to the board." And I'm like, "About what?" And he was like, "Tell them why you're not," he was like, "Tell them that you're not PME complete, but tell them why you're not PME complete." Then he's like, but from then, so he's like, "Tell them why you're not tell them that you're not PME complete and why." Yeah. And then he's like, on top of that, tell them, that you couldn't go to the course because you were currently unvaccinated, so the Marine Corps wouldn't let you go to the course. Yeah. And then he was like, "You're on recruiting duty, so you're exempt from the course." And then the MOS manual says that if you're on recruiting duty, you're exempt from the course. So he was like, "Bro, write him this letter." So I was like, "Okay." So I ended up writing the letter to the board. So then now it's, I'm waiting to see, like, so I wrote the letter. Then I'm calling down to headquarters Marine Corps to see if they even got the letter. And then they're like, "Oh, well, it's not this person." And they're passing me along to all these different people. Long story short, I get a hold of some random Master Guns, and he's like, "Yeah, we got your letter." Yeah. So I was like, and then the Master Guns, this is the crazy part. The Master Guns tells me on the phone that if I hadn't submitted the letter, I wouldn't have been briefed because they didn't even know that they didn't know. Like they literally were like, bro, we would have never known you were on recruiting duty.
Yeah.
He was like, we just thought you were in the reserves, like just being a shitbag. He was like, yeah, like we wouldn't have known if you didn't submit this letter. So I'm like, bro, I'm like, Gunny Pinto, my man. So then I submit the letter. So now I'm in that window of waiting to find out if I'm gonna get selected or not. And it's just at this point, it's just like, just frustration. And then I'm like, okay, well then I find out I get selected. And on this day, now I'm just waiting to find out, like, when if I'm getting selected.
Yeah.
And so I have 3 close friends that are Marines that I call, like, when it comes to like prayer and stuff like that. It's you, Master Gunz Montanez, and then this guy, Master Gunz Simons. He calls him, like, people, he's known as Pops.
Yeah.
So another dude that I met on Instagram. So I call Pops, and I'm just talking to him, and his long story, it was like 45 minutes of me and him on the phone, and I'm just sitting in the car and I'm crying, like, just like I'm just like done. And he's just like, bro, you gotta stop. He's like, just stop, trust God, trust the process. He was like, bro, either God's plan is you're gonna be a gunny on recruiting duty, or you're going to be a staff sergeant on recruiting duty and then you'll get gunny, or he's like, or he got another plan for you. He's like, but guess what? And everything you can do, he's already got a plan. He's like, so just stop. And he's like, bro, just trust in God. And he's like, just pray that he'll lead you and that he's got you, and just have faith in him. And he said, I don't remember what Bible verse it was, but he said a Bible verse. And then I got off the phone with him, and then I made a Facebook post, and it was something, about just, trusting in God and having faith and that. And then I get out of my car and I go to get my haircut, and it was like the guy was busy. Someone had just sat in the chair, so I couldn't sit down. And I only go to, and now mind you, this barbershop is, they're all Dominican. They don't speak English. So, but they know how I've been going there for a while. So he knows my haircut. And, I had my Dominican boy call him and tell him, what do I need? So I'm waiting for my haircut, and I get a FaceTime from my boy Gunny Rod, who I haven't seen and like talked to in a couple months. And I'm like, yo, what's up, Gunny? And so now I'm in the barbershop on FaceTime, right, surrounded by all these Dominican cats. And I'm like, yo, what's up, Gunny? And he's like, yo, you got selected. And I was like, what? I was like, Gunny, I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, your name is, and he says some off the wall name, like Franklin Bennett, right? And I'm like, no, I'm Douglas Bennett. And then the first sergeant in the back goes, oh, nah, it ain't him then. So I'm like, bro, are you kidding me? And then he's like, what's your first name? I'm like, it's D.A. Bennett. And then the first sergeant in the background is, oh yeah, he's right here. And I was like, so now I'm in the barber chair, I'm in the barber shop, and I'm screaming, like I'm yelling on the phone. I'm like, bro, get the heck out of here. I'm in tears, I'm crying. I walk outside, and I'm literally in tears. And I'm like, bro, thank you so much for calling me. Like, I can't believe this. And then the woman from the barber shop comes outside, and I was with my son. I had my son that day. And Lucas is just looking at me, and he's like, Dad, is everything okay? And I'm like, yeah, buddy, everything is okay. And then the woman from the barber shop comes outside, like, because I understand, like, I didn't leave my son, but like I just walked right out front of the store. Like I could still see him in my vision. And she comes outside and she's like, you left mijo. And I'm like, no, I got him. But like, bro, yeah, man, like if it wasn't for that phone, if Gunny Pinto didn't feel whatever need to message me that day, and and then for me to have this conversation with Pops, and for him to be like, bro, just trust in God, give it to him, relax. It's just, it is, man. And the hardest part about it too, man, is just like, it's so easy to say that, You know what I mean? It's so easy just to be like, oh man, like just pray about it, bro. Just give it to God, man. And it's just like it's so easy to say that, but it's hard to actually do it and just be like, you know what, God, like whenever it is your time, you'll put me here, you'll put me there. And now, the one thing I can say I've definitely learned, and I'm still getting better, like everybody, but the definite thing I've learned in the past, like 2.5 years of being, well, 2.5 years of being back on recruiting duty, is the patience piece, man. Is literally like, and I told my CEO this yesterday. I said, I was like, I'm still trying to say, I'm still trying to figure out why RS is Burlington. I still don't know. But he was just like, hey, because they needed you. And and it's just, I think about stuff like that, and I think about like, because a lot of times, especially on recruiting duty, you're told, hey, you're gonna go here.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden 6 months from now, it's like, actually, nah, you're not gonna go there. You're gonna go here. And then, and that's, that's the thing too, is like, okay, if I didn't go there, there's a reason I didn't go there. Yeah. And now, my next step is, now as a gunny, it's okay, well, you're gonna go here. And now I'm like, someone asked me the other day, they were like, well, what would you want to do and where would you want to go? And now I'm just like, you know what, man, I don't know. Like God, you know what? I think I'm just kind of done making plans. Like, you know what I mean? Like wherever God wants me to go is where I'm going to go. And, he'll figure it out. Like, I don't know.
And man, it's funny, bro, because I got promoted in February of 2016 to gunny. So when you get, you got promoted in February, I was like, oh, that's a good month, man. It's a good month to pick up, right? But I know exactly what you mean when it's the patience, right? Because true definition of patience is long suffering, the long game, right? That's how you really grow as a person. And during my time with going on recruiting duty, and bro, I think we talked about this, and I've shared how many years I spent as an EADer. I don't wish this upon anyone. I don't. Anyone who's an EADer now, I don't wish it upon you. That's why they fixed the process now to where they have a certain amount of years built into the program to enable success for you to achieve what you got set. But those 7 years I spent as an EADer working towards becoming a career recruiter, even after doing well as a recruiter, getting recruiter of the year, and then going being an NCIC, doing well as an NCIC, 2 different stations, being NCIC of the year 2013, NCIC of the year 2014, and still was never promoted, right? Never meritorious promoted. Not one time in the Marine Corps. I used to wonder at those times and be like, why am I going through this stuff? Why? And matter of fact, staying connected, and you mentioned earlier about making a decision of wanting to grow with other like-minded individuals and people that are walking in faith. At my church right now at Lake Point here in Rockwall, Texas, my wife and I, we attend a life group. And so other couples that we're connected to, and we're all walking together in faith. We're growing together in faith. We support each other in and out of church, right? We established some good relationships. And today we were actually talking about self-isolation and how a lot of times no one's putting us to be alone except ourselves. And so we're trying to grow, but we're trying to do it on our own and walk by ourselves. And a lot of times that's very challenging because accountability is usually what a lot of us need. And we need accountability to grow. And I was talking about it this morning that because the question came up is like, hey, has there ever been a time when the light bulb turned on why something happened or what it was about? And I was like, yeah, I've had a few. And one of the first ones I remember is when I took over my 3rd RSS. And, I didn't complain, man. Hey, they said, go ahead and go get it. I'm like, all right, I got it, no doubt. Whatever.
Yeah.
One more. Then go to carrot. One more. And I remember sitting across from one of my Marines, and he was having some challenges, man. He'd always been beat down emotionally, spiritually, career-wise, everything you could think of, brother. And it was at that point, here I am 7 years later, from 2007 to 2014, when this is taking place, this conversation. And the light bulb turns on, Benny, that it's not about me, It was never about me. It was about the preparation of getting to that point because he was going to need it. It wasn't for me, it was for him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that taught me a lot about the path of growing with God, even though I wasn't walking right with him, but I kept running back to him.
Mm-hmm.
All of that process was a purpose to help my guy, not me. And the other piece was that after that took place, and I spent 7 years as an EADer. Finally, when I became an 8412, honestly, man, I lost a little bit of that flame because when I was an EADer, it was all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
And have the, as an EADer, you don't got the comfort of
you got to prove yourself,
and I can be lazy this month.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry about it. Marine Corps ain't gonna get rid of me. A lot of Marines that are on recruiting duty, on active duty, they can get lazy. And a lot of people, they get lazy. Oh, I'll get next month. Don't worry. Good. You did a good effort, buddy. Like, nah, bro.
Yeah.
And that fire when I became an active duty Marine, leaving active duty, going into the reserves and coming back on after I transitioned from being an EAD to an 8412. Some of it went away. And I look at that now, and that was actually a portion of my time of when I felt like I had made it, but it was also like I felt I didn't need as much of God because I'd gotten to a goal I thought I did on my own.
Woo! And so my man.
I tell you this now, and for some reason my spirit is telling me to tell you this, is that the reward is not the end, the reward is the work.
Yeah.
So the work that's being completed that you're doing, leading Marines, taking care of all the men and women and their families, the whole process of what it took to get here, don't lose it, because the real prize for you, it wasn't about picking up gunny. That's just a portion of the result of your work. The real prize is all the work you've been putting in, because it's that you've been achieving.
Yeah.
That's what people around you have needed.
I can 100% attest to that. And I agree 100% with what you're saying, because, when, 2 years ago, or, going on, we're in 2025. No, going on 5 years. Wow. Crazy. So 5 years ago, when I got fired and I went back to being a reservist, I never thought 5 years ago, like, being in this exact same room, starting this exact same podcast, like, never thought 5 years later I'd be a gunnery sergeant back on recruiting duty, about to have an 8412 package put in. Like, never thought that. But one of the things that I know for a fact is that time matured me, and it also made me more accountable to my decisions and to what I do, as a human being, as a father, because the reality of it is that, like, I don't know where I would be right now if I had become an 8412 in 2020. And I look back and I think, to be quite honest, I don't think I would like who I would have become. And I say that because in 2020, I was an alcoholic and I was a drunk. And I didn't have a relationship with my family, and I was never living, that was in the house, but I wasn't there. I wasn't being a dad, and I wasn't being a husband. And, I was just more focused on my career, getting awards, doing all these different things. And I liked, like you said, like, being on stage, getting bats and getting NAMs and all that stuff. Like, it's just like, look at me. And it feels really good. And then when I lost all that and I just went back to being a civilian, I was like, wow. But I look back at it now, and like you said, it's all of that got me to where I'm at. But now, I've been able to use that test as a testimony, to certain people. There's a Marine that just recently got fired. Not fired. He had some stuff going on, and I was able to be like, hey man, when this happened to me 5 years ago, I understand what you could be going through, and I understand, how it feels. And I was like, if you see this going on, and this, kind of giving him those signs and stuff like that. Then I have another Marine who's also going through some other stuff. And I've been trying to be able to just be like, you know, kind of sharing some of what I've gone through and stuff like that. But definitely, you know, and that's why too, man, like a lot of people ask me like why I came back to recruiting duty. And a lot of people think that it's just because I'm good at it, but it's not. It's not because I'm good at it, because, you know, I could just do this exact same thing, but in the civilian world, like, and have a lot less stress and, you know, not be in the Marine Corps on recruiting duty. And I could just have like, you know, a lot less stress and be home every day at 4:30, you know, and eating dinner with my kids every day. But, you know, I told this to me, my Marines recently, like, the reason why I choose to do this, the reason why I came back to do this is just because I've realized the impact that we have on people. And I constantly try to teach my Marines, um, if you don't talk to somebody every day and change their life, that's a selfish act.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've learned, is that everything that I did ever in my life that was negative, it was a selfish act for me to do that thing, because it didn't always have to result in me being the person that had the negative thing happen. You know, like when I was drinking, right? It was me sitting on the front porch, not putting my kids to bed, or me not being with my wife when she needed me, or, you know, not being able to do whatever the case is, or not having money to do whatever, you know. So then I started to realize that these things that I was putting in place of myself were actually just really selfish acts that I was doing that were actually hurting other people.
Yeah.
And it really just made me realize that. But to go back to what you're saying, like 100%, like if I really don't think that I would like who I am if I was where I am, if it had happened then, if that makes sense.
It
Like
does.
100% I understand now.
Yeah.
I get it. I'm like, you know what, man? My God, now I understand why you didn't have this happen years ago. Um, and then I just look at the accountability piece. And even now, you know, like, okay, how can I be better for my Marines, my family? And that's why yesterday, like when you know, I'll be honest, I kind of blacked out when my speech came, so I don't even remember most of it. I feel like that always happens because I was thinking about it every day. Like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say?
Yeah.
But I do remember, you know, one of the biggest things I tried to say or correlate at least was that, like, the way that I want to be as a gunnery sergeant is reminding myself that I don't wear the rank for me. I wear the rank for other people.
Yeah.
And especially on a duty that we're on, there's a lot of people that can keep their mouths shut when stupid things happen. And I want to make sure that I don't become that person, that I just take care of my Marines, I take care of the Marines. And I try to make this thing that we call recruiting duty a little bit better every day. Like that's the goal.
And you know, when we can't try to make everybody else the right version of themselves until we become the right version for ourselves. And a lot of it requires us to, you know, to look inward. And there's gonna be times when we're not living up to our potential, and when we make mistakes, man, and when we just get it all wrong, bro. Always. But I know that when we look back on it, and especially after you suffer some personal failures or just anything, right? I mean, if you've been on recruiting and you ain't missed mission, you haven't had that many mission letters. You've been on recruiting duty and you haven't, you know, been a part of some problems or some issues, then man, you haven't worked hard enough and you haven't been out there and seen enough people. You've been boxed in. You've been living in a cupcake candy cake world. The longer you stay out there, the more stress, the more emotions you will go through personally, professionally, and you'll see a lot of things happen, and it'll test you, which is a portion of leading to your testimony whenever it becomes ready to be given to others. Because to speak to somebody, you have to have gone through it. Otherwise, it falls on deaf ears whenever you try to pass them some good advice, or you try to mentor them and develop them. But one of the biggest things and the blessings that come out of getting things wrong is that you learn to develop empathy for someone when they make a mistake. And a lot of times, that's probably the hardest thing that was for me, was empathy. And I know a lot of Marines, because we all look to hold ourselves to an extremely high standard. But you know what? It ain't possible. It's not going to be possible. You ever meet a leader who's got themselves on this pillar of where they've never done anything wrong because
Yeah.
they've been out there long enough? You know, something's
Yeah.
going to happen. And it's not to say that everybody's got something wrong with them or something bad going to take place, but we have to remember that we're imperfect people trying to be in a perfect environment. We're trying to make this facade that we're so well put together and that nothing's going to phase us and that we got all the right answers, when in reality we don't. We'll start learning as we go along, right? And that was one of the other pieces you mentioned earlier about, like, when you're on stage and you're getting the awards and you're getting all these things and you're getting recognition. The first sin that was ever committed,
Pride. Yeah.
Pride gets real big before the fall. It always happens. Always. It don't matter what rank, who you are, Marine or not. The prouder you get, the harder the fall. And the moment will come. And it's going to happen, regardless of who you are, because nobody can escape pride. And when it gets too big and too heavy for you, them cars will come crumbling down. Take it for what it is, because it does happen. But the beauty of all of this, especially now with you have been through the walks you've been through, acknowledging the fact that you need to grow with yourself, and then you're in the perfect position. And you could be out there in the civilian sector doing this without the Marine Corps, and you would do extremely well, man. I mean, you're like an entrepreneur on recruiting duty. You've stepped away from military service. You know what it's like to be in a corporate environment. You've come back. You understand the walks of life. You do extremely well, like with or without the Marine Corps. But there's a reason that God aligned your path to come back. And there's a reason you went through all of those things, because here in the near future, and as you continue that journey, you're going to continue to encounter person after person, family after family, that they have been needing someone, a part of their walk is going to be you. And so that's why earlier I said, like, the work ain't done, man. It's actually just going to get started, but it's another level because of just everything that God has put you through. It's all meant to shape you and mold you so that you're prepared for the walk as you continue, man.
Yeah. Those are definitely a lot of things that I got to deal with, man. Like humility, pride. Those are definitely things that I've gotten a lot better on, but I still deal with them. But back to what you were saying, man, like empathy, and this is like a whole nother episode, but bro, it is so hard for me to be empathetic or sympathetic, like, and it's just like how I grew up. Like I don't say that as like as a cop out or an excuse. Like I had a Marine recently, something happened, and I asked him, you just like, how are you? And I genuinely meant it. Like I promise you 100%, like I meant it. But then as soon as he started telling me about how he was, my head went, bro, I really don't care. Like, I'm just being real. I know this sounds horrible, but like, it's so hard for me to like actually sit here. And it's not because I don't care. It's really not.
Yeah.
But it's so hard for me, like when something happens, like, and this is something that I've talked to my boy Mo about, my wife, like, there's something that like, I don't know if it's just like a chemical imbalance or something in my body that like, because like when someone's like, if somebody like tells me like, oh, so-and-so passed away or this happened to me, my inclination is, oh, well, get over it. Like it happened. Like what can it, like I had a Marine years ago, this Marine, and I'll be real, like at the time, like I said, I've gotten better. And this is why God didn't make me 8412 5 years ago. So I had a Marine, and I now looking at hindsight's 2020, now looking back at life, I understand how messed up I was for this. So I had a Marine in my office that was making phone calls. And this Marine, like, I love him as a human being, but as a recruiter, he was just so bad.
Yeah.
And it was just like, no matter what training you gave him, no matter what you did, it just never got better. And it was just like that dog that you just want to shoot because like it'll never get better. And that's how it was. And so every day I would give this dude training and it would just never get better. No matter what, the ARI would come out, the RI would come. Everybody would give this man and nothing good would happen, right? So this one day, it was like early, I think it was like early in the morning. He's making TCs, and in the middle of his TCs, he gets a phone call from a friend. And I guess the friend told him that their best friend in their friend group had died and overdosed from drugs.
Yeah.
So he tells me this. And my and I'm not lying. Like I straight out was like, okay. I was like, well, he's dead. Ain't nothing we can do about it. He chose, and I was like, bro, he chose to do drugs. I have no remorse for him. He killed himself. Get back to making CCs.
Ooh.
And my A gunner, who's now Gunny Mo, very close friend of mine, just looked at me and he was like, dog, this dude just told you his best friend died and you just told him to go back and make phone calls. And I'm like, and I literally looked at Mo and I looked at my boy Durkee and I was like, bro, what can we do? I was like, the dude is dead. I was like, if the wake is like tomorrow, then sure, tomorrow he can deal with that. But like, what is he gonna do right now? He ain't got no appointments for tomorrow, nothing. And my boy Mo is like, bro, are you for real right now? But the craziest part was like, I couldn't at this time 5 years ago, I couldn't understand where I was wrong.
Oh man.
And now again, that's why when I look back, I'm like, I'm a lot better. Like now my wife will tell me all the time, she's like, wow, you're doing a lot better. Like you're doing, a lot more, you're a lot more empathetic or sympathetic. And still it's like, there's things that happen and I'm just like, okay, I don't understand. Like, go deal with it. Like I don't. So yeah, but now I understand a little bit more. And I'm getting better. I promise, I'm getting better. So the prayer request for me is to help me just be more empathetic and sympathetic.
That's that MC4 coming through, man. That coach, tactician, and influencer, all in one.
Yeah.
And man is one of the toughest things to. I'd imagine for a lot of strong, successful Marines, right? Marine Corps. Empathy can be one of the toughest things because some things seem so easy. Like it shouldn't be this tough, man. Like I can do it, you can do it. I had it this hard, you should be able to have it not as hard. And that's one point that later on I was like, you know what? We got to meet them where they're at. I got him or her where they're at.
I know, and you say that all the time, and that is like the hardest thing for me to do. Like it is so like sometimes I'm just like, dog, like I have this recruiter. I love him to death. Like probably one of my all-time favorite people I have ever worked with. But this dude, me and him together, oh my, we both have ADD, ADHD, and it's bad. So like the two of us, like we'll go and we'll be like, all right, we're going to get in the car right now. We're going to go do some training. We're going to go to this school and we're going to do this. And then as we're on our way to that school, we'll just be like, well, actually, why don't we go to this school? Or why don't we stop at Wawa quick? And then, but the craziest thing is every single time this happens, all the amazing things happen. Same day interviews, same day this. Like it's never a negative thing that happens. Yeah. But like when we talk about like meeting them where they're at, like this dude closed out all of his schools. This dude's got like 4 or 5 kids working in every single school, got an NRTC scholarship winner, got all this stuff done. But like when you ask this dude to do a career talk, when you ask this dude the NRTC talk, when you ask him to do like this dude every day, hell, like, and it's stuff like, bro, it's like, bro, how do you not remember that? But then I look at myself and I'm like, okay, now I understand. So now I understand, like working with this dude, it makes me realize like how people feel when they got to work with me because of my issues. And I'm like, bro, am I really this bad? And then my Marines are like, no, you're worse. And I'm like, there's no way. Like, there's no way. And, but nah, it's definitely, This duty, man, it definitely tests you and tries you, but it definitely also causes me to always revert back to, you know, praying and more being more in faithfulness. And also something recently, too, before we cap it up, that I've also been doing, is I've recently been able to witness to a couple of people that, like, when it came down to the decision of joining,
Yes.
I always ask, like, one of the things I always ask when someone tells me, like, hey, I just don't know what to do. I'll just be like, hey, respectfully, are you a prayerful person? Are you somebody who, is in tune with God or has a relationship with God? And I always be like, hey, if not, totally understand. I'm not trying to put anything on you. I'm just asking. And they'll be like, yes or no or whatever. And if they say yes, I'll be like, listen, man, like, go home and pray about it. Like, pray about it with your group or your family or whatever. So I've been talking to a lot of people like that. And also just realizing too, like, as recruiters, like, we need the instant gratification.
Yes.
And there was this young man, a couple of, like, all through January, that said yes, then said no, then said yes, then said no. And I just told him, and I even told his dad, I was like, listen, sir, I want you to know I'm really praying for your son. Because right now he needs the discipline to make a decision. And I pray that God opens that up to him. And his father was like, you know what, I really appreciate that coming from you. Like, it's not often that happens. And, so I've been trying to do that as well. It just kind of be able to just, like, actually remember that, like, people have to make sound decisions, not just off the stomach. And putting it into that, and then praying for kids, like, every time I have a kid on deck, I'm praying, like, not because I need to make mission, but hey, God, what is it that you would have for this person? Or and even, like, going into work a lot, I'm like, hey, God, like, pray that I meet the right person today, that the person that I'm supposed to intervene with, the person that I'm supposed to stop, and being more deliberate, with who I'm talking to and stuff like that.
Absolutely, man. I know you're gonna wrap it, and it's probably one of the best things. Because I know.
Oh, actually, before you do, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
So one of my poolies, Mr. Pooley Harper, said, how do you develop more empathy? Because I'm the same way as you, brother. I don't know. Maybe Pedro got some help for us, because I'm still on that. I don't know.
All right. So
what do you got? What do you got for us?
One of the ways that, for me, about developing empathy was to obviously go to, since we're talking about faith, right? Going into the Word, and then uncovering what love, strength, what love and strength really mean, right? And then understanding the definition from Scripture, and realizing that, like, our major responsibility in the Marine Corps and recruiting duty is to locate, close with, win the hearts and minds. Okay, it's recruit the nation's best and win the nation's wars. A portion of that is that along the way you grow as a leader. And something that's really special about being a leader on recruiting duty, you have the ability and the opportunity to come encounter with people who have nothing that keeps them to stay committed to the Marine Corps except for the people that they work with. Leading people with the power of free will, it takes a different style of leadership than what it does if you're in the operating forces, because you're told what to do, when to do, how to do it, no more, no less. On recruiting, when you work with a lot of young men and women who they're at the freedom of their will and decision to say yes and no, you grow as a person. But to develop empathy, you have to start seeing everybody for where they are at their point in their life, and realize that you can either be an addition to their life that empowers them to become more than who they are right now, or you can be the force that stops them from growing because you take them down the path to let them know they're not enough. And in life, there's two things that people usually are wondering every day. Do I have enough? Am I enough? And if you get in the way of that, and you make them feel negative about not being enough or not having enough, you start to you start to not see them being a person, and honestly, you start to look at them and say, if I can do it, you can do it. And there's a lot of people that jump on social media, and there's a lot of books out there, and they're like, people should be able to do this and so on and so forth. Yeah, man, I got you, bro. You're trying to sell a book and trying to sell a podcast. I get it. But to really develop empathy, you have to understand what love is, and you have to understand what strength is. Then you have to recognize that we're all in different walks of life. And if you're stronger, true strength is doing it in the most humble way, having humility. And when you can learn to have humility and know the definition of love and strength, and understand that people are all walking on different paths towards their future, but really care about them because you care about them as a person, the empathy will shine through, because one day you're going to need it from somebody. And you may not recognize it, but someone else gave it to you along the way. You just don't see it. So you have to, it's some self-reflection, but it's really just homework on your piece to understand what it is. And then it's a daily commitment to, kind of like on recruiting when they tell us to go out there and listen with purpose. Understand, build trust, facts and feelings, and then you observe the body language. But you're doing it all for the best intention of helping that person, not helping yourself. I mean, you start developing it in ways that you don't even recognize, and it's character. Character is really how you treat those who can do nothing for you. You'll find about people and a lot about yourself on how you treat others. And if you're the person that is only treating people a certain way because of what they can do for you, you got a huge character flaw, and that's eventually going to rise to the surface. And I know you're, the pulley or whatever, you're aspiring to go into the Marine Corps. If you can learn those lessons right now and you're on the way, that path of heading out to training, you're going to be that much of leader, because you're not going to start at the bottom. Your ceiling is going to be a lot higher because we've raised the floor for you. So I'd encourage you to actually get connected and stay with someone like Gunz Sergeant Bennett, and start digging into yourself, but also start doing some devotional studies on your own, of really growing as a young mind, aspiring to lead others, but really looking to develop the sense of understanding where everyone is in their life, and that you can be in a portion of their life of leading them towards another level that they haven't seen yet.
Well, I did not want this episode to get into empathy because I hate it. But no, seriously, I definitely understand that, like you said about the piece of, how do you treat people, and is it because you treat them that way because you need something from them? But thank you for everything. Thank you for coming on here. Thank you for sharing your story with your wife and your family, and what you've been through as well. And thank you for, most importantly, thank you just for being a friend and a mentor, and somebody that I constantly am able to go to, and pray with and get mentorship from. So I appreciate that. And hopefully one of these days, just like yesterday, it was crazy yesterday. I'll leave it at this. It was crazy yesterday because my CEO and a whole bunch of people were like, well, how do you know this guy that's about to pin you?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, actually, I've never met him before today. And everyone was like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, today's the first time I'm meeting him. And so it was definitely crazy meeting Master Gunz yesterday. And he came in my office, and I was like, wow, you look so different, in actual, like, your complexion and the way like you look mad different. But it was awesome to, and again, to him as well, it means the world to me that he was able to be there yesterday and take the time out of his day and his own funds to come out and be there. And it just, again, like, and you too, I can't wait to finally meet you in the flesh. But I couldn't thank God for, people like you enough, because, you have absolutely no reason to always answer my phone calls, even when they're at some crazy hours. And you do. And I appreciate that, man, more than you'll ever know. So thank you so much, man. Do you have anything last that you want to throw out there or anything like that?
For me to you, man, it's been a pleasure. And I'm glad that that I came across your podcast almost 2-3 years ago now, probably like 3 years ago. And, you know, we've been connected, and, you know, we message each other back and forth, and have developed a relationship and a friendship, man. And it's a blessing for me. I love it so much, brother, because it's great to see someone else doing what you're doing. And it's the first time I met you when we were on a call. I love what you do. I love the fact of how you are transparent, you know, whether about your profession, your personal life, just your walk with God, everything that you're looking to do, because you're an imperfect person just looking to find the right way. And there's a lot out there who need to know that there's someone like you in the ranks. And that's the blessing, that's the icing on the cake, is being a Marine, and that you're still out there doing, you know, the work for the Marine Corps, but also God's work, brother. And
amen.
I look forward to meeting you in person as well. Hopefully my complexion is better than mine. But I would tell you this and encourage you this, I know you asked for prayers. I'm gonna put them prayers and put you in my prayers as far as growing with empathy for you and all the people on your team, all your Marines and the pulleys in your program. And I would encourage you. This is something that I do, and it helped me a lot during recruiting duty. I'd take a scripture. I'd have a scripture in my desk. I'd have another scripture under the doormat entering the office. And what I always wanted to do was to make sure I blessed my office, and I'm blessed my RSS. And everywhere I walked, man, I made it conscious every day to remain disciplined and exemplifying something that when someone would look at me, they'd say, you know what, there's still some goodness out there, and look to get them back towards the path of, like, I wonder what he's got and why he's doing that. Right. And I wasn't always perfect, and I'm never going to be that way. I just hope I had more good days than bad days, and people remember the good, vice the bad.
Amen.
But for you, right? You're out there, you're being a leader, brother. You got promoted, well deserved. The work is still starting now. And so take some scripture, put it in your desk, put one in at the doormat entering the RSS. And I'm sure that others, they're going to see this. They're going to come encounter with you. And the other blessing about you, helping people become Marines, is you're going to lead somebody to walk in faith and grow strong for themselves. And they're going to thank you for it someday soon. And they will come to God because of you. And it'll be probably one of the best next missions that you've achieved, because God has called us all to be disciples on this earth. Probably the next blessing you receive soon, man. So
amen.
I wish you the best on that, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it, brother. And have a great rest of the night, and we'll talk soon.
All right, brother. You too, man.
All right.